Hello and welcome back to another episode of Math with Sohn. Today we are going to be solving some proportions from Kuta software, Infinite Geometry. So solving proportions are, there's a lot of different simple steps that your middle school teachers could tell you, but I just like going and doing an x like that, and I cross multiply and then sometimes divide. Other people call it the multiply, like the butterfly thing. So you're going to do 6 times p, which is potentially the worst variables to look at because it's like a 6 and then an upside down 6, would equal 4 times 2. Now, you don't have to write 4 times 2 out, but you could multiply that in your head and write 8. Okay? So then you just divide 6 on both sides. And if we divide 6 by both sides, or on both sides, we end up with 8 divided by 6. And 8 divided by 6 is a few things. It is 4 over 3, or it is 1.3 repeat, both of which are correct. You could also write 1 1/3, but not likely that that is going to be the method of doing it. All right, so I'm going to do a few more of these. The first chunk is really easy, but until you get the swing of things, we got 4 times 2. It does not matter where you start. Okay, so I typically start in the top left-hand corner, and then I move on, equals 8 times k. The only thing I don't recommend is writing K8. That would probably not be good. 4 times 2 is 8, is equal to 8K. Divide by 8 on both sides. K would equal 1. All right? One more problem for safe measure. We'll do the one with the X because X is normal. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go down to the bottom because they have a 5n on the bottom. Oh, no. We're going to cross multiply 6 times 5n. So write 6 parentheses 5n. And I encourage my students to write out even the easy ones, even the 5 times 2, just to get in the good habit. 6 times 5 is 30n, is equal to 10. And if we divide both sides by 30, you divide by the number attached to the variable, you get 1/3 because 10 divided by 30, you can divide them both by 10, and 10 divided by 10 is 1, and 30 divided by 10 is 3, or 0.3 repeat. Okay. Not any harder. They're just decimals, so we have to use a calculator. So I'm going to do one of these, and then I'm going to move to the problems that you might need some assistance on. We're going to do 10 because I'm looking at it. It would be 6.1 times v. v times 6.1 would equal 4.9 times 5.4. 4.9 times 5.4. All right. We're going to multiply 4.9 and 5.4 together. 4.9 times 5.4 is 26.46. Now, you do not want to round 26.46. You're not done yet. You can only round. Technically, you're not allowed to round unless your teacher tells you to. But even still, you can only round until after you're done with the problem. So when you're finished with the problem, that's when you're allowed to round. So I got 26.46. I'm going to divide that by 6.1, and I get 4.337. Now, 7. Now I am allowed to round, apparently, according to the worksheet, to the nearest hundredth. I could not round early. I can round now. So that would be 4.34 tenth hundredth. Thousandths is after that, so that 7 rounds the 3 up. All right, let's do slightly harder problems. Slightly harder. They're not much harder. They just involve a little bit more algebra. Here, we're still going to cross multiply. We're going to do 9 times 6. Will equal 8 times all of this stuff. So that's k plus 6. And that is why I tell my students to write it out and don't be lazy in the meantime. So we're going to distribute the 8. That's going to be what ends up happening. And 9 times 6 is 54, would equal 8 times k. That's 8k. 8 times 6, that is 48. All right. Let's move everything away from the 8k. That means we have to subtract 48 in this particular situation. And we get 8k is equal to 54 minus 8 is 6. Let's make sure. 54 minus 48, I think I said 8, is 6. We divide by 8. We divide by 8. And both of those things divide by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So you get 3/4 or 0.75 as the final answer there. All right, let's do another one. Let's do they get any harder? At the very end, they get a little harder, but for right now, it's just another practice problem. 10 times 4, look at that, I went out of order, would equal 2 times a minus 3. distribute the 2, multiply 10 times 4, get 40 is equal to 2a minus 6. Let's add that 6 over. If we add 6 to both sides, we get 46 is equal to 2a. Divide everything by 2. 23 is equal to a. All right? So let's skip down to the bottom. Let's skip down to the bottom. The bottom gets a little bit harder, but not much harder. The reason that these are slightly harder for both of these, we'll do both, is because they have two sides with some variables. So let's still treat it the same way. We're going to multiply 4 times b plus 9, and that would equal 6 times b plus 5. It does not matter which one you start with. I don't even have an order. I just, for whatever reason, I gravitated to 4, and I did 4 times b plus 9, what was across from it, and the 6 times the b plus 5. This is what I wrote down, and that's what I have to do. 4b plus 36 would equal 6b plus 30. What do we want to do now? Well, typically you want to get the variables on one side, and for me, I am going to subtract the 4b rather than subtracting the 6b, because 6b minus 2b minus 4b is 2b, and that's positive. And I prefer things to be positive, not just be on the right side or the left side. We're going to subtract 30 from 36, and you have 6 is equal to 2b, which means when we divide by 2, b would equal 3. Perfect. Perfecta. Okay. Next one. We're still going to cross multiply. We got 2 problems left. I'm thinking about doing the challenge problem at the end. We got 8 times x plus 5 would equal 6 times 5x minus 4. Let's distribute the 8. We get 8x plus 40. 8 times x and 8 times 5 would equal 6 times 5x is 30x, and 6 times negative 4 is negative 24. Which one would we like to subtract? Or would we like to add? Do you want to add the 24 first? You're allowed to do that. You want to subtract the 30 or subtract the 8? All of them are allowed. I like to move the x's first most of the time. So we're left with 40 is equal to 22x, because 30 minus 8 is 22, minus 24. We're going to have to add the 24 to the other side, and we are going to be left with 64 is equal to 22x. So, does 64 divide by 22? No. No, it does not. Not to my knowledge. 64 divided by 22 is 2.9. 2.91 if we want to round. So we get x is equal to 2.91 unless we made a mistake. And mistakes just prove you're trying. All right, the critical thinking question. Oh, maybe. I'm just going to write down 23. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to write it down. It would be 8 times 7b plus 4 would equal 3 times v minus 9. Okay, and then you would have to distribute. But that one, they had like the v's on the top. And one mistake some students like to make are like, the v's cancel. They do not cancel. Don't cancel. No canceling. You have to do that. Okay, here, critical thinking question. Do you think that a person's age and the amount that they eat each day are basically in proportion? Well, I'm going to say right now, no. When you're young, yes. When you're a baby, you eat less. Okay? And then when you get to 10 years old, you eat a little bit more. And then when you get to around 18, you eat even more. Okay? However, when you're growing and 18 years old, you're going to eat more than when you're 40, where comparatively to when you're 18, you will eat less. And then when you get even older, I don't know if you know this or not, but like your grandparents or maybe your parents, if you're an older individual, when you get to like 80, you don't eat a lot. Therefore, age is not proportional to how much you eat. It would be kind of nice to be 80 and be able to eat all the food in the world, but you just don't. You don't work around and you don't move as much, and therefore you don't eat as much. Okay? That's going to do it for this one. Until next time, stay positive, my friends, and I will see y'all later. Bye.